Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities Midweek Money Matters. We are going to be talking about money management and budgeting today. I am recording today's session, so kindly remain muted until the end of the session when I stop the recording and we open up the floor to any questions that you may have. In the meantime, go ahead and pull up your chat box because we are going to be doing some interactive participation today because money management is a great way to start a conversation about ways that we can really start to think about the way that we manage our money and different things that we can do as we start this process. So without further ado, my name is Katrina Boyer, and money management is all about how we handle all aspects of our finances. What it is not is money management is not just sitting down and making a spending plan or a budget. It actually involves setting some of our long and short-term goals. It involves thinking through the process of what we can do to reach those goals. And it really is all about planning the aspects, sort of all aspects of our financial outlook. So it involves what we're doing today, maybe what we've done in the past, and what we're planning to do in the future. It is not saying no to everything all the time. It's not about deprivation. It's more about saying no to certain things so that we can say yes to those most important things. So start to think about what types of things are most important to you for your future. And know that today we're going to talk about money management. We're going to talk about budgeting and spending plans, but we're actually going to outline 4 different types of spending plans because not everything is good for everybody. We'll also talk about ways that we can better manage our money to help us reach some of those goals so that we're comfortable with saying no to some things so that we can be ready to say yes to those more important things. And then finally, we're going to talk about different resources that are available because the reality is that in 30 minutes, I'm only able to cover so much. But there's so much more out there. And I always encourage people to take the time, listen to what we cover today, but I hope that it kind of piques your interest so that you start to look for more information and maybe you'll come back and join us for another session of our weekly events. So let's take a few seconds and think about the things that are most important to you. And maybe in the chat box, just tell me what types of things are most important to you. Some of the things that I think are paying off debt. Imagine how good it would feel if you could look yourself in the mirror every day and know that you were basically debt free. Or maybe taking the time to spend time with family during vacations and things of that nature are important to you. Just take a few seconds and tell me what's important to you in the chat box so that we can all start to think about those important things. Maybe we want to start saving money for the down payment on a house or being able to be debt free so that we can spend time with our family, friends, and loved ones. Absolutely. So, someone says that their goal is to be debt free and start to save for vacations. I love that. Vacations and traveling with family. Absolutely. What about having a more reliable mode of transportation? I am always amazed when I think about different types of vehicles that are available. And there are some that are very, very reliable. And maybe that's something that's important to you. Travel is another big one that I'm seeing. Thank you all so much for sharing. enjoying your time on vacation with your husbands and children. I love that. Being able to do those types of things are definitely things that we can do if we start to manage money. So let's look at ways that we may be able to start to work our way towards being able to do those things. If we break those goals down into specific goals that are measurable and they make sense that we can actually get to them, and having them be realistic and timely, those are all really great things that we can do. And if we start to make these smart goals and work them into an actual budget, then managing our money doesn't necessarily feel so overwhelming, does it? So here's this aha moment, because we all tend to think that having a budget or working towards better financial management has to be this negative thing. But if we look at this slide, this one before, breaking those goals down isn't such a hard thing to do, is it? So if we manage our money, and managing our money well can help us reach those goals, then using our budget to decide how we're going to do that, to make that plan, isn't necessarily such a bad thing, is it? When I was doing research for today's session, one of the things that hit me the hardest was that, we all tend to have this sort of attitude that, money management is this hard thing to do. But the reality is, if we step back and look at it from a different perspective, it may not be such a bad word, if you know what I mean. So a spending plan can help us better manage our money so that we can reach those goals. Having time with family, being able to take some vacations, or even just enjoy some simple things around the house are great ways for us to be able to reach those goals. So today I really want to talk about 4 different types of budget strategies. For the most part, we all think about that zero balance, or what I like to think of as a traditional budget. But did you know that there were other ways that we can budget our money? There's an envelope budget, there is the pay yourself first budget, and even a 50-30-20, or a rule of thumb budget. I often get questions from people who say to me, Katrina, isn't there a formula that I should be aware of, that I should be striving to reach when I think about my budget? So let's talk about each of these different budget strategies, and let's talk about them individually. So again, that zero balance or traditional budget is where we actually start to allocate specific amounts of money into different categories. Whether you are trying to pay for housing, whether it's a mortgage payment or rent, we also may have to pay childcare or child support. All of those things have to be allocated. So the goal is to have a plan for where every dollar is going to go. So if you know that you have $1,500 coming in, you want to plan for where $1,500 is going to go. The goal with a zero balance or traditional budget is to have a zero balance for your finances, not to have a zero balance in your accounts, but to have a zero balance in where you want to break even. So you want to have as much money going in as there is going out. The envelope budget is sort of this different concept, and it can be very helpful with those of us who are more tactile people. Maybe we're more tactile learners. So I do see that there may be an echo happening with today's session. If you are logged in from two different devices, that could be causing that echo. If you continue to have that echo, please send me a message and let me know, and maybe I can do some troubleshooting really quickly. But the envelope budget really is a great way for us, those of us who are struggling to make ends meet. And the concept is that you have a series of envelopes, and each envelope is labeled with your specific spending category. So maybe it includes an envelope for utilities, one for housing expenses, another for groceries or gift giving. Lots of different envelopes for each different category that you need to set money aside for. When you get paid, the concept is that you go and you cash that paycheck, and you have that cash in hand, and you put the money for each category into its specific envelope. So let's say that you are planning to spend $150 for this pay period on food. You put that cash in there, and then you have it available when it's time to use it. You will also put money aside so that you can pay some of those other bills. The concept for this is that when the cash in that envelope is gone, you're done spending for that category. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't readjust, because the reality is, in any time that you are trying to work through a budget, sometimes things come up and you have to pull from one and put it in the other. But that envelope budget really does help with, especially particularly those of us that are the touch kind of learners. I know that for me, I'm a huge tactile learner. And the reality is that if I have it in my hot little hands, I am going to be able to grasp that more literally in my head. So the envelope budget is great for that type of person, and those of us who are trying to make ends meet. So another question came through about whether or not a copy of the PowerPoint will be made available. Typically what I do is I make these PowerPoints available. If you send me an email and request it, I will be happy to send it out to you as a PDF document. So when we're done today, I'll provide you with my contact information, and you just let me know that you're looking for a copy of that. Okay, so the pay yourself first budget is a concept that has us put aside money that we plan to save for our long-term goals as soon as we get paid, or even before you get paid. So those of you who work for the Commonwealth, or those of you who work for a larger company that offers 401k and those types of scenarios, this is another way that you can pay yourself first by having that money automatically transfer into a retirement account or some other investment account or a savings account that you're trying to use to make your long-term goals. What's really cool about the pay yourself first budget is that it forces you to live on the amount of money that you have left. So basically, if you're planning to save 15% of your salary for your long-term goals, you put that away first, and then you're really don't have much of a choice but to live on whatever is left, and you can allocate towards your budget that way. This concept, as I said, really does help to meet long-term goals, which is a great thing to do, particularly for those of us who have habits of waiting until the end to see what's left over to put that aside for our long-term goals. So this pay yourself first concept is great for being able to set that money aside first for the long-term goals, and it can really help with making us cut back in areas where we can. So the 50-30-20 or rule of thumb budget, this is, I get a lot of questions about, is there a formula that says I should spend a certain percentage on housing or a certain percentage on my car payments or transportation, those types of things. So the 50-30-20 rule tells us that we should take 50% of our net income, which is the income after taxes, and use it to pay for the things that we need. So our needs are our basic living expenses. So housing, transportation, food, utilities, those types of things that we absolutely need to have. We can't live without. We have to have car insurance. If you're a homeowner, you have to have homeowners insurance. So this rule of thumb budget says that we take 50% of our net income and use it to pay for the things that we need. 30% of our net income can go towards things that we want. So we need groceries, but we may want to have more a more expensive meal. So that wants category becomes sort of this fuzzy line, but it is a really great way if you're trying to make sure that you are targeting specific amounts of money. Then the 20% of our net income is what we want to put in savings. And that those savings can be any type of savings that you can imagine, whether it's putting money into a savings account to save for emergencies, to set aside money for long-term goals. That's where we put our savings. Now, the rule of thumb budget is really great for those of us who are just starting out with a new job. It can be a problem for those of us who already have a large amount of bills. So, if we have bills that have to be paid, those would go into a needs category, and that may push us to having 60 or 70% of our income going towards our needs. What's great about the rule of thumb budget is that the 50-30-20 split isn't set in stone. So if I know that 57% of my income has to go towards the bills that I owe, then I can cut back on maybe the wants category and maybe only spend 20% on my wants. Or maybe, the great thing about this is that we can really adjust that the way that we do the budget as far as the percentages towards categories go. So let's think about ways that we can maybe better manage our money. We know that we have these budget options. What can we do to be able to, again, manage that money better so that we can be better stewards and better budgeters? One way that we can do that is by tracking our spending. I have to be honest, a few years ago when I was doing a presentation for traditional budgeting, I started to track my spending. I tracked it for 30 days and I realized that I was spending way too much money on things at convenience stores because it was convenient. Instead of spending $1.50 or $2 on a single bottle of water, I was able to determine that I could spend $4 and get a case of water. So spending money at a convenience store was definitely a spending leak for me. And when I plugged that spending leak, I was able to save an extra $75, and it allowed me to be able to pay more towards my debt, which is helping me to get closer to being debt free, which is one of the goals that I have. So tracking that spending, recording where you spend every single penny can go a long way in helping us to realize where we can make some changes in our spending habits, which help us to better manage our money and helps us to be able to change the way that we are planning our budget. So I hope that you can see where tracking that spending can be very helpful. So what about planning for big purchases? I'm going to talk specifically about planning for holiday spending. I have 7 grandchildren, 4 kids, 3 in-laws, children-in-law, and lots of other people that I want to buy gifts for. So I broke it down by how much money I wanted to spend on each gift. And when I thought about the main people that I wanted to buy for were a total of 18. Well, I wanted to budget about $75 per gift or per person. So I sat down and I figured out that I would need $1,200 in order to be able to spend the money that I wanted to spend for the people on my gift list. And then I figured out that I have 16 pay periods before I'm going to be beginning to shop for the holidays. So if I knew that I needed $1,200 and I had 16 pay periods to get there, I figured out that I needed $75 every 2 weeks in order to reach that goal. So think about this 5-step process for a big purchase that you want to save for. What is that goal? How much is it going to cost? Is it going to cost you $2,000? And when do you need it? Are you planning to save that $2,000 over the course of a year or 2 years or maybe even longer? And then you think about how often you get paid. If you get paid every 2 weeks, then and you've got 14 months to save for it, then you know that you've got about 28 pay periods. If you divide that amount of pay periods by how much money you need to save, or how much money you need to save by the number of pay periods, that's going to give you a number that you need to set aside every pay in order to reach that goal. Now you just need to think about where you can trim other places on your budget so that you can set that money aside and reach that goal. Now, my husband and I did this with our saving for our daughter's wedding. And what was really fantastic was that we realized that at the end of the day, we didn't necessarily miss that money, but when we reached that goal, it felt really good to be able to give her that money. And then we started to save. We kept saving that same amount of money, and we actually saved to pay for our first cruise. We paid cash for it. It was the best feeling. So take this in and think about how you can use this to meet your goals for your big purchases. Let's talk about some other ways that we can better manage our money. What about shopping for best prices? Looking through the sale ads and planning your meals around what's on sale rather than planning your meals on what sounds good and what's convenient for us to grab. And what about cutting back on services? Maybe you have 3 or 4 streaming services, plus you're paying for cable that you don't watch. Those are ways that we can cut back. Or what about on our car insurance or our homeowners insurance, cutting back, increasing the deductible that you have to pay before the insurance is going to kick in. So for years I kept my deductible at $250, but I found that I was able to save a significant amount of money by actually increasing my deductible to $500. And what I did is I made sure that I set that money aside so that I knew that I would have it in the event that I had an accident. Checking with your providers to see if you're getting the best rates is another great way that we can shop for and do make better management decisions. So, what would you do if you had an extra $200 a month? In the chat box, just tell me what your thoughts are on what you could do if you happen to have an extra $200 a month. Would you be able to pay off debt faster? Think about if you could put $200 away a month for a vacation. Or what about making renovations to your home? What are some other ways that you can think of that you could do with an extra $200 a month? Absolutely. Paying off debt. That's a really great goal to set. Saving for house projects. That's exactly right. My husband and I have been starting to set money aside so that we can get a few projects done around the house. And it feels really good to be able to see the fruit of that coming together. Absolutely. Saving towards retirement. That's a really great way to use an extra $200 a month. So, in today's world, there are a lot of people who are starting to take on what they call a side hustle, whether that's selling crafts or projects on the internet or taking your projects to craft fairs where you're able to sell them. Those types of things involve an investment. So, like if you're going to start to sell on Etsy or eBay, know that those websites take a percentage. But what about walking your neighbor's dogs or doing delivery driving? I saw an ad just the other day, or I saw a thing on the internet about people who are driving for Uber or Uber Eats. And the reality is that delivering food is a great way to make some extra money. If your goal is to pay off debt very quickly, it may be better for you to take on that side hustle so that you're able to start really putting money towards that. And the reality is, there are lots of different part time jobs that we can take on in order to help us better manage, to increase the income that we have so that we're able to manage our finances better. So, as we start to wrap up, I always like to provide resources. My office, the Department of Banking and Securities, has information on our website about budgeting and avoiding scams, hanging on to our money. We've got information about investing, so you can go there. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has some really great articles on money management. The Securities and Exchange Commission at investor.gov has some really great resources on being able to start to invest. So that can really help to meet our long term goals. I would encourage you to go into your favorite search engine and simply type in money management or budget resources. You will be amazed at the information that you can find on the internet to help support some of the information that I've shared here. I I do want to tell you about our Office of Consumer Services. They're available during regular business hours and they're happy to answer questions that you may have about the companies that we regulate. They're also happy to help you understand perhaps a side gig opportunity and making sure that it's legitimate and you're not about to fall victim to a fraud or scam. Because while there are many, many side gigs, we need to know that sometimes the side gigs that are available are actually frauds in disguise. So we want to make sure that we are researching the company or the thing that we're considering doing. Now, I do want to thank you so much for your time today. My name is Katrina Boyer. You can reach me at katrboyer@pa.gov, or you can give me a call at 717-514, or excuse me, 717-214-5565. If you'd like a copy of today's session, you are more than welcome to email me or give me a call, and I will be happy to get that information out to you. I am going to be stopping the recording now.